All right, hi everyone. This is Maddie and Bryce from Foundry. Say
Hello.
hello, Bryce. Hello. Hello, Internet. So we're here today to introduce you to Flix. This is our first webinar. We're very, very excited about it. A quick introduction to us. I am the product manager for Flix. I oversee the general engineering strategy as well as liaise with all other departments as far as Flix's overall growth is concerned. Bryce?
And I'm the Flix specialist, so I deal with demos, training, tutorials, and all that stuff.
Yes, it's great fun. And Flix, as you may or may not know, is a pre-production story development tool. Really, it's meant to be a hub that sits at the center of story, previs and RLO, and editorial, giving you a central location to get all the materials you need, taking care of things like naming, organizing, and versioning your files so you don't need to worry about it, so that your production staff doesn't need to worry about it, so your artists don't need to worry about it. That is Flix's role. And it also integrates with most of the industry-leading applications. So you can work with Photoshop, you can work with Storyboard Pro, you can work with TV Paint on the sketching side, you can work with Maya on the previs rough layout side, you can work with Premiere, Avid Media Composer, or Final Cut Pro on the editorial side. And finally, we have integration with Shotgun when the time comes to hand off to production. So that's sort of the scope of what Flix can offer to your production. Right now we're mainly in feature animation and TV animation, but we're pushing into gaming, VFX, and live action even. So really, if you ever have pre-production that needs to be organized, that you need an easy central storehouse to find everything, Flix could be a very good fit for you. So today we're going to be giving you a basic overview of the story editorial round trip and then handing off assets to production. So we're going to be looking at a Photoshop related process with Flix. We're going to be looking at a Storyboard Pro process with Flix. We're going to be looking at a Premiere process with Flix and with an Avid process with Flix. We'll also be starting out giving you a brief overview of how Flix is organized and how you can use in-app tools to make your production more effective. And we'll finish off, like I said, with that crucial handoff to production and how Flix can streamline that for you. So that sounds very exciting, I think. What do you think, Bryce?
Extremely exciting.
Let's get into it.
All right, so let's launch Flix. So at this point, we're going to have a little splash screen telling us that it's launching. So Flix is installed on a server at the studio, and everyone can access it by just launching it locally, and they will open it in their web browser. So by default, it's going to be Google Chrome. All right, so when it launches, the first thing that you're going to see is the project browser listing all the shows you're assigned to. So to load a show, all you have to do is just click on its name. And at this point, you're going to have a list of all the sequences that make that show. If you have an episodic show, that will be a list of all the episodes, and under each episode, you're going to have a list of all your sequences. So all the description, the act number, the tracking number, and all that stuff can be changed by the production staff using the Edit Details button, for example. You can also create new sequences directly from that view using the New Sequences button. So first, let's load this sequence called Humanville by just using the filter in here and clicking on its name. And once we do that, that will load a list of all the revisions that ever happened on that sequence. So whenever you make a change, so if you move panels around, if you change the timing, if you make revisions to some boards, whatever that may be, you're going to have an opportunity to save a new version of that sequence. And whenever you do that, Flix will save it, so you can always go back to that previous version. So a really cool thing too is that you can add a comment when you save something. So for example, if you save a version for screening, you can save that with the word screening so that later on you can just look for every version that was used for screening, and Flix will just show you all of those versions.
Yeah, absolutely. And you guys are going to find that very useful for a variety of reasons. On the production side, it's going to help a lot because it means you're never losing anything and it's going to be very easy to find everything. So if your director asks for a sequence that was cut in a previous screening, you don't need to scramble to find it anymore. Flix is non-destructive. You can find it. In those comment sections, you can make your own sort of protocol for searching. So if you want to search by screening, if you want to search by artist name, however you want, or keywords that you come up with, you can do it that way and it's going to be really easy for you. And on the creative side, since everything that Flix is keeping track of is going to be multi-layered, it's going to be really easy to make slight tweaks to previous versions or even grab the background that you remember you drew whatever it is, it's just going to make your life a lot faster and easier, which is why a lot of artists love Flix.
All right, so in our case, we're going to want to load the latest version, which is what we'll want to do 99% of the time by just clicking on the load latest version. All right, so at this point, Flix will load all the boards that you have in your sequence, so you can see all your panels in context. You have all the boards in there. You have a viewer on the right that you can make slightly better if you bigger if you want to see that. All of those boards can be rearranged directly inside of Flix. So I can move one board or multiple boards to a different location, for example. So I just select them all, move them around, and it's just that easy. You can also retime panels. So these panels already have some timing information. So for example, this board is going to be held for 7 frames. If you don't want that, if you want it to be slightly longer, you can hold it for 10 frames, for example. The other thing that you can do in Flix is use the pitch mode right here, in the top right-hand corner, to have your panels full screen. And at this point, you can just step through all your boards, by either acting it out as you pitch it or by explaining what is going on in there, and just, do that at your own rhythm, just as if you were pitching a sequence. You can also record your timing as well as audio. So if you use that little button right here, it will use your computer's microphone and record your voice as you pitch it. And you can also click on this little record button right here. So that will record the timing for each board. So every time I go to the next panel, Flix will record the amount of frames that I set on it. So whenever I do that and then I leave the record mode, you can always go back and that will be your new timing.
Yeah, and that can make things really easy for you, even though I know a number of animation editors who have these computer-like brains where they know about how long every sequence is going to be. It's a really nice way of keeping track before you make it to editorial if this is running generally too long or generally too short. The other really nice thing about that is if you get a huge laugh from the audience or if they don't respond the way you were hoping, it's going to be very obvious because you can listen to it right back in the moment. The other thing that pitch mode can do for you, and it's going to play slightly strangely since we rearranged these panels, but this sequence actually already came back from editorial. It has a sound, it has a timing from editorial, so if you just hit play, it's going to play it through like a QuickTime movie for you, with audio, with everything. Vampires.
Vampires. A lot
We're
of
aware
vampires.
now because of the audio. So that's good. It's really helpful. The pitch mode is something that when I worked with Flix at Paramount and Original Force, we used all the time for reviews. It's really quite helpful.
All right, another capability directly inside of Flix is that you can turn those into shots. So if you want to add some shot breaks, you can just select all of your shots. So let's just select the first panel of each shot. I'm not going to do that for the whole sequence. It would take way too much time. We don't have that kind of time. So let's just turn the markers on and click on that little button that will add markers so you can clearly see your shot breaks. So Flix will automatically name your shots 001, 002, 003. But you can obviously change that by using the shot label in there. So if you have a different naming convention, you can just change that yourself. Also, something that is worth mentioning is that all of those boards, they're just JPEGs that you see in Flix, but they're also linked to their PSD file, the original PSD file created by the artist. So if I were to just double click on that panel, for example, Flix would find the PSD file on the server and just open it for me in Photoshop for easy revisions.
Yeah, and that's going to be a really, really excellent thing when it comes to creativity as well as collaboration. So it means that if you have multiple artists on a sequence, they're always going to have access to that multi-layered PSD. There's not going to be any more drop boxing or figuring out how to get this from that computer to the other one. It's just there. It's easy. The other thing that's worth noting is when we dive into the Storyboard Pro component of this demonstration in a second, we export PSDs from Storyboard Pro. So if you have a revisionist working in Photoshop with your main artist working in Storyboard Pro, the revisionist is going to have no problems with that workflow, which is really, really, really nice. One last thing worth noting about that shot break functionality. I think most of us who have worked in animated production have the memories of sitting down with a bunch of paper of a contact sheet and trying to break down shots that way, deciding, what should be a shot and what shouldn't be. You can just do it all in Flix, and then eventually when you are ready to hand off to production, it's going to be divided up for you, which we'll get into at the end of this demo.
And one last thing for this first part is really the dialogue feature of Flix, I guess. So whenever you have a panel selected, you can see the dialogue under that under your viewer. So you can either edit it in there or go to the dialogue workspace and edit your dialogue in there as well. Is that garlic? All right.
Yeah, so the dialogue inform is actually very helpful. When I worked at my previous studios, we did our dialogue informs in Flix over just, doing something like having a QuickTime pulled up along with Final Draft. It's much easier to keep track of things this way, and it's also a lot more nimble than Final Draft is, because Final Draft you're going to be saving a new version every time. This way you can just track the dialogue as it comes by having your script supervisor sit down, watching it, updating it, and that way when everyone clicks on it, if the director ever comes into a Flix cut, the most recent dialogue will be there. It just makes the production management process a lot more simple.
All right, and at this point we made all of those changes to our edit. The save button is highlighted in red. We can just click on it. That will save a new version. Obviously we messed it up completely, so we can go back to that previous version that we had earlier.
Do you want to show them that really quickly? So,
Absolutely.
we just totally brutalized our sequence. Whoops, we didn't mean it. Really easy to go back. Just go back to that yellow version. All your PSDs will be in their original order, with their original timing, with their original dialogue. It is all good, and they won't have been divided into shots yet. So, really easy to backtrack in a way that can be actually pretty difficult traditionally in pre-production. Now we're going to move on to how Flix and Photoshop can make your lives a lot easier. All right, so now we're going to start out by showing you how a story artist might start their process using Flix, and then we'll get into some more complex workflows with Photoshop and Flix. Take it away, Bryce.
All right. So the first thing, I created this sequence called webinar sequence that I didn't do any work in, so it says empty sequence. I'm just going to click on start a clean version here. And at this point, I'm a story artist. I'm going to want to work in Photoshop, so I just open Photoshop. I have Flix running in the background, and that's really about it. So we have all those actions in there that come with Flix and that you can have in Photoshop. So what I'm interested in right now is this new 177 thumb. So that will create a document with a bunch of thumbnails at the aspect ratio of my show, which is 177. And at this point, I can just start drawing just numbers in there because, well, I'm not that good at drawing.
He likes to be modest. He's quite amazing.
I mean, you can tell by the quality of those numbers.
Look at those numbers.
All right, beautiful.
Okay.
So now that I'm done with all of my thumbnails, I can just use the send thumbs action directly in Photoshop. Click on that, and let's just switch to Flix for a second and see Flix import all of those thumbnails differently. So basically, Flix knows exactly what area of the document is which thumbnail, so it will just divide that document into my 9 thumbnails and import 9 different boards directly in Flix.
Yeah, and I think this is just a really good example of how Flix tries to respond to creative needs. Something that almost all artists still like to do on the story side is thumbnail. And why would you waste the time redrawing all of these when you can just have Flix at least beat out the separate panels or at least the separate sections for you that you know you're going to work in. So that's something that we were asked for, we delivered. That's the sort of product we attempt to be. Onward.
All right, so now I have my first pass of thumbnails, and these are now just Flix panels. So if you want to do, some revisions on those boards, like we mentioned earlier, all you have to do is just double click on one. Flix will find the original PSD file. So in that case, it's just this guy. So let's say we can crank down the opacity on this layer to actually draw our proper, board in there. Let's make it fancy.
The vastly improved board.
There you go. This is a beautiful revision. And at this point, what I want to do is just in Photoshop, go to File. Oh, go to File. Okay, let's just do Command S and see.
He was trying to demonstrate a save, everyone. It's nothing complicated. You can do this.
It's complicated for me. So I used Command S in my Mac, which is the universal, shortcut for saving. And at this point, what Flix did, it replaced my original board with my new and improved revision. So Flix and versioning, this is kind of one of the things that Flix does really well. Whenever you make a change to a board, it will version it up. So it replaced it in Flix, but it doesn't mean you don't have access to the previous version of that board. So you can always go back to a previous version in case you want to go back to it.
That's just a click hold. It's really, really helpful. I see artists doing that all the time. And, this versioning, once Bryce presses save, then they have their, sequence to start working off of, having started at the thumbnail stage. So it's quite helpful. Yeah, so I think that the other really, really useful thing about Flix's integration with Photoshop is that the artist can primarily work within Photoshop however they prefer to work. They can work in timeline, they can work in layer comps, they can work, with a million tabs open if that's how they work. But all of these actions that you're seeing on the right-hand side basically mean that you can just sit in Photoshop and send things over to Flix, which is really, really helpful.
So for example, let's just create just a blank document. And let's say we want to insert it between panel 3 and panel 4 in there. So let's actually call it 3.5, which makes sense.
It does.
So at this point, you don't want to go back to Flix and tell it, hey, I want to insert it between 3 and 4. You want to do that directly from Photoshop. So we have those two actions right there. So next in the previous panel. So if you click on the next panel, it will go to the next panel in Flix. And do that again, we'll go to panel 3. This is where I want my new panel. I can just click on current image, and Flix will just insert that board that I have in Photoshop directly in my Flix sequence.
Yeah, and if your question is, why does this matter? Just imagine yourself as an artist. Almost all artists work with a monitor and then with something like a Wacom Cintiq. They will have Photoshop up on the Cintiq and Flix up on their monitor. It means that they just don't need to click around that much, which sounds like a small thing, but it actually makes you really, really fast. They're also not saving or naming any of these files. They are just going. Flix handles all of that for you, so it really speeds things up in Story.
All right, so let's try a more complex example. So let's open a board that has some layer comps, more layers and all of that, just to show what you can do with Flix. So let's just delete all of that for now, jump back in Photoshop, and open this board. So here, for example, I'm using layer comps for this board. So this is my first pose, this is my second layer comp, which is the background and the second layer, third layer comp, which is my background and the third layer, and so on. So I have 5 of those. So what I want to do at this point is just send each of those layer comps to be a new panel in Flix. So for that we have this action which is called each layer comp. And Flix knows exactly which layer is included in which layer comp, and it will just create panels for each of those. So Flix also cleans up all your boards. So if you have just 2 layers visible in the layer comp, when you open it later on, Flix will just open that board with those 2 layers that were visible at the time. So if you have 100 layers in your PSD file and you want to make a revision just to that board, you don't have to navigate through hundreds of layers in there. You can just make your revision directly in there, and it's pretty clear.
For sure. And the other excellent news about that is that if you do want all 100 layers, you can send this file to Flix as a master image.
Exactly, using the master image button. There you go. So when you use the master, it doesn't add it to your sequence. This is kind of the original PSD file that we send to Flix, and Flix just keeps a link between those boards that were created out of this master image, and we'll keep a link to it by just clicking on this panel's ID. And then you have, this is my master panel, so if I click on this little Photoshop button right here, Flix will find the original Photoshop file and open it for me, so you can clearly see this is the original one with all my layer comps and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So at this point, yeah, you agree?
I agree. It's
All
good
right.
stuff. Sorry, peanut gallery here, guys.
All right, at this point, what I want to do is just make a change to the background that is shared across all of my layer comps. So in that case, we're going to toggle on that layer, which is basically just a glow around the moon, and just refresh that and apply that change to all the other layer comps. I believe this is how you do it.
Looks glowy.
It looks glowy on all layer comps. So now I made just one change to one layer, applied it to all my layer comps. And at this point I want that to, all those boards in Flix to be replaced by the new version that I currently have in Photoshop. So I'm going to use the replace each layer comp action, which is down there. And Flix will just go through each board that I have in Flix and replace it with the new version of the layer comp from Photoshop. So instead of opening 5 different panels, making the change 5 different times, you can just open it once using the master image, make the change and replace everything by pretty much the click of a button.
Yeah, it's great.
So while that's doing that, we can also mention quickly the timeline. So in Photoshop, I know not a lot of story artists use the timeline, but you could.
I have worked with story artists who use the timeline.
You have.
They exist.
They exist.
Mm-hmm.
So if you do use the timeline, you have kind of a similar capability with Flix using the each frame action in there. So instead of sending each layer comp, it will send each frame to Flix. It's just as easy as that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, I think this is done.
Yeah, and the other really, really nice thing that you can do using this sort of functionality, you can do camera moves in Photoshop, you can do, you know, lots of stuff that traditionally just isn't that easy while maintaining that master image. So just keep that in mind. It makes Photoshop more powerful for you.
There you go. I guess one last thing we can mention for that is, you know, camera moves like you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
So we have this selection tool, obviously, in Photoshop. I just want to make sure the aspect ratio of my selection tool is 177. So let's say we want to do a little pull-in on the moon. So we're just selecting that area of the board, and we want to just send that area as a new panel in Flix, just to simulate a camera move, you know, a little pull-in. So and let's use the cropped current image action right there in Photoshop. And if we go to Flix, you'll see the new panel that it creates is just this one area, so we can make that area a little smaller once again. Just select that and use cropped current image again, and I will send once again another panel, so you kind of have your camera move directly in Flix.
Exactly, and that button's also really nice if, for example, you have a major screening coming up with a bunch of important people and you'd really prefer to have that beautiful painted background. Just make yourself some panels using the cropped current image of a beautiful concept art piece and put layers over it, and Flix will handle all of that for you. So hooray, your movie got funded thanks to Flix. It's amazing. All right, so that's a nice intro to Photoshop and Flix. I think now we will dive into Storyboard Pro. All right, Storyboard Pro and Flix.
Cool, so let's open our Storyboard Pro project. So it's a really short one. Just a couple of shots, well, scenes, I guess, for Storyboard Pro. So this is my first scene with this guy just sipping his tea and getting scared. Then this is my second scene with a corn rolling on the floor. So we didn't do any timing in Storyboard Pro, but everything right now is just 24 frame long. We do have some boards with dialogue and action notes, so it's very minimal, but for example, at this point in action notes you have rattle. Second one, you have something that says slurp because he's drinking his tea. And we don't have any camera moves, but we can get into that another day. So in Storyboard Pro, we have 3 different buttons. So added by the guys from Toon Boom.
Yes.
So thanks, guys.
Thank you, Toon Boom.
So the first one will send pretty much every board I currently have in my Storyboard Pro project to Flix. And I'm going to click on it right now so that it does it while I'm talking. The second button will only send the panels that I have selected. So this is useful, you know, when you make revisions to just 5 boards in your edit. You don't want to send the whole sequence again because, you know, Toon Boom has to export PSDs. We have to import all of that stuff, so that takes time. If you just want to make revisions to 5 boards, just export those 5 boards by using this guy. And the third one is even better because if you're using Storyboard Pro's tracking mode, it will automatically highlight boards that you changed since the last time in yellow. And all those boards, whenever you click on that, they will be sent to Flix without you having to worry, you know, about selecting them first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just so you guys know, from a speed perspective, Storyboard Pro is going to import into Flix as fast as it can push PSDs out. So sometimes with a very large sequence, that'll take a bit longer, but it's as fast as technology moves. Flix is there with you.
Just go get a coffee and when you come back, it's going to be there.
Exactly.
All right, so the import is done, so I can just quit my Storyboard Pro project and go back to Flix. So in there, I'm going to have this little pop-up that tells me the import was successful. So the first thing you'll notice is, well, I guess the boards come in, so that's good. And also you have your shot breaks that correspond to the scenes that you had in Storyboard Pro. The scene names also match what you had set in Storyboard Pro. So the naming convention that you have in Storyboard Pro, they will be ported back to Flix. Also, you will have all the action notes as well as the dialogue that will be in Flix based on what you had in Storyboard Pro. Also, you will have the duration. So I mentioned earlier we didn't do any timing in Storyboard Pro, but you know it was all 24 frame long. Now all the boards in Flix are 24 frame long because of that. So these are multi-layered PSD files that we exported from Storyboard Pro, and as soon as they're in Flix, it means you can open them, you know, as PSDs. So if you have revision artists that are who are on Photoshop, you can just double-click on one of those boards, and Flix will find the PSD that was exported from Storyboard Pro and open it directly in Photoshop. So, you know, we've got our board here. You can just make your little revision in there and just save it, and then we'll just version of the board that was originally from Storyboard Pro but edited in Photoshop. Flix also keeps track of the project where those boards came from. So if you wanted to make a change, you know, to those boards, for example, in the original Storyboard Pro project, you could just use Storyboard Pro as your editing sketching software instead of Photoshop. And Flix will automatically find the original project that was used and open it for you with the panel that you had selected, highlighted in your project. So let's wait until Storyboard Pro opens. Cool, here it is. So at this point, let's say we want to make a revision to make a change to the background that's shared across that scene. So for example, we could add a little vase on that table. So let's say around here. So again, I'm not a story artist, so this is gonna look terrible. It's just a couple of flowers, very sad flowers. And let's just copy this layer and duplicate it to, let's say, just those three other boards. So copy this layer. Select the boards that you want to duplicate them to. Paste layer special. And that way I have my vase on all those boards. So at this point we can use the export tracked panels plugin that I mentioned earlier. And Flix will automatically know which board to import. So we'll just take those 5 boards and version them up in Flix directly.
Yeah, and the other really nice thing that you guys will notice, when you open up from Flix, if you have a specific panel in Flix selected, it's gonna, you know, go straight there when you open up your Storyboard Pro project. So say you're deep into a sequence, it's gonna open it up in the right place for you. Which sounds like a little thing, but it's actually pretty helpful rather than scrubbing through the timeline.
For sure. All right, so we just exported that out of Storyboard Pro. Let's not save it. And let's see what it looks like in Flix. So here I have just, you know, my first 5 boards that were updated with my new vase and my couple of flowers in there, which looks great.
Beautiful, wonderful, magic. So, I mean, really, the Storyboard Pro workflow is pretty straightforward. All you guys need to worry about is drawing in Storyboard Pro, send things to Flix when it's ready, and, you know, at this point, presumably in your process, you have sketched a sequence and are sending it to editorial, so let's dive into both workflows in Avid Media Composer and Adobe Premiere. All right, so let's jump into some editorial workflow stuff. So where Flix is really relevant to editorial is in, you know, assets moving back and forth. So we're going to start off by showing you guys how you push all of the information from Flix into editorial. We're going to demonstrate how it happens with Avid and with Premiere. And then, you know, at the end, we're going to show the conforming process back from editorial, what editorial needs to do to get their edit back into Flix. And it's all very simple, I promise. So take it away, Bryce.
So simple, I can even do it.
It's true, and we're dumb.
So let's use the, so first to push to Avid, we can use the Avid plugin right here. Just click on that. You can add a little comment saying pushing to editorial, very original, and click on the publish button. So at this point, Flix will create an AAF file for each panel, as well as an ALE file that has timing information, ordering information, stuff like that. It also creates a PDF file, a contact sheet, with all the boards that you have in your sequence that you just published, and it will highlight the panels that are new to editorial, so they've never imported before, in there. So obviously this is the first push to editorial, so everything is new. doesn't really help that much, but in the next passes, when you just have a few boards that were revised, it makes way more sense.
Exactly, because in the future, when you're pushing just a few things to editorial, they'll just get those few files, and the contact sheet will show them exactly where they're supposed to go. So it's quite easy.
Another thing is that Flix will generate an email and send that to whoever you want, really, if you want just to go to your editorial assistant or everyone in the editorial department or whoever that is. This is customizable. And in that email, you will have a bunch of information such as who published it, it's me, what the comment was, what version was published, how long it took, how many clips you have. It has a list of all the clips that you have in there. All the new clips, all the deleted clips based on the previous publishes and stuff like that, which is pretty useful. So once that's done, you have a couple of pop-ups saying, yeah, we've done everything successfully. And at this point, we want to use the editorial tab that comes with Flix to import all of that stuff into the Avid.
Yeah, so really this will be the interface that your editorial assistant or your editorial coordinator is interacting with most if you're working with Avid. And you're first going to look at this To Avid component. The Bryce is going to walk you through.
Exactly. So the To Avid tab in the top right is right here. The first thing you want to do is just make sure you have the right project and sequence selected, which I do. On the left here, you have a list of all the versions that were published to editorial. This is the first one we ever published, so that makes sense. And on the right, it will show all the boards that are new for that particular version, as well as the ALE file. So at this point, all you have to do really is just select where you want those AEFs to be imported, click on the import button, and Flix will just copy all those AEFs from the Flix server to your Avid workstation network, so you can access all those files. Just drag them into the Avid and you will have everything. So embedded media, timing if you had any in Flix, all the metadata such as the dialogue and stuff like that. Cool. Is that it for Avid? Should we go?
Yeah, in terms of pulling things into Avid, it's really simple. You guys handle your bins, you handle your organization, we will push it wherever you need it, and then you get to editing. It's really, really simple. And then for Premiere, it's, I think, potentially even simpler, which is crazy.
It is simpler. So let's just change our editorial plugin from Avid to Premiere, which is the same as Final Cut Pro 7. So if you're using that, it's the exact same thing. Let's add the same comment. Let's actually say publishing to Premiere and click on the publish button. And at this point, what Flix will do, so same thing, it will send an email, it will create a PDF. It will also just create an XML file that points to all the boards that you have in your sequence. So this is my XML file. I'm just gonna open my Premiere project that I have right here, which is empty. Just drag this XML in there. And Premiere will find all those panels that I have referenced in my XML. Double click on that XML, and that's it. That's
really, really simple, guys. And with the Storyboard Pro sequence or something like that, that is keyframes or camera moves, there's going to be an extra data XML generated for you that you can pull in, and all of that will port into Premiere. So the Storyboard Pro Premiere workflow is pretty nice right now using Flix.
All right, so now to come back from editorial.
Indeed. So in your imaginary land, there are editors editing both on Avid and on Premiere separately, and it is time to come back into Flix and have all of their changes conformed and ready for a storyboard revisionist to get going on.
All right, so the only thing we need from editorial, whether that's from Avid or Premiere, is a cut list from Avid and an XML from Premiere, as well as a movie file. So just those two files from those two applications.
Yeah, so either a cut list in a movie, which is Avid, or an XML in a movie, which is Premiere.
Thank you.
Very easy.
This is way more clear than what I said.
They generated anyway. I think your way made sense. I'm just covering our bases, Bryce.
All right, so to come back from editorial back to Flix, you want to use the To Flix tab as opposed to the To Avid tab, which makes sense.
Yes, and this will be true either for Avid or for Premiere.
Exactly. Same thing, make sure you have the right project and sequence selected in there. And at this point, what you want to do is click on this big button that says Movie and or EDL, meaning CTL from Avid or XML from Premiere. Click on that and it will open a file browser and you can go to where you exported your movie and XML to. which I've already done. It's already populated in there. So this is my movie from Premiere. This is my XML from Premiere. You have a couple of options in there. You can publish to a different branch. So Maddie can talk about that when I publish it. You can choose to push that sequence that you're publishing to Flix to Shotgun at the same time if you have that set up. And this last option right here, as stills, is just to choose whether you want to see stuff like camera moves, you know, in their entirety in Flix or not, or if you just want to see the mid frame of each board, which, you know, we want to see the camera move, so I'm not taking that.
Yeah, but the nice thing as well is even if you just want the stills in Flix, that movie file that we're asking you to export will always port over into Flix. You will always have the QuickTime of that sequence with full, you know, seamless playback, whatever you need. So it's really just a matter of preference. Do you want to see an animated panel in Flix, or do you want to see a still image because you're just using it as a reference touch point for reviewing? So when he was talking about branches, branches are a really, really nice functionality when it comes to collaboration in Flix. Really what it means is that you can make an instance of any sequence that's sandboxed to a specific person or group. So for example, oftentimes studios will make a separate branch for previs and RLO if they maybe want to get started beating things out, even though some revisions are taking place in story. So you can have a story artist revising the storyboards and then work uninterrupted, while a previs artist is working with Maya, which is a separate workflow that I'm sure we will do a webinar on soon, but we don't have quite enough time to hit today. They can be working in Maya in their separate branch. The other beautiful way to use this is if you have multiple story artists working at once. So for example, in an episodic series, potentially you have lots of people working on sequences at once. They can work on their own chunks, and at the end you can merge the branches together, merging in every most recent panel together into one completely new sequence. So that's very nice.
Exactly. So while Maddie was talking, I just went ahead and started the publish. So I just added a little comment in there. Again, very original, back from Premiere, and click on the to Flix button on the bottom right. Perfect timing. Now it's all imported. I just want to touch on that little log that you see in here. So Flix will tell you what it's doing. It will tell you what it found in the XML or the cut list. So for example, the first thing it found is this marker, which indicates a shot. It also tells me it created 3 ref files, which we'll touch on in a second. And it also tells me, you know, these are all the boards that it found. So these are Flix boards that, you know, already existed. So Flix just reconfirmed it to the original PSD files, as well as the timing for each of those boards, the in and out points. So you can see all that kind of information in there. Mm-hmm. You also see when you have effects that you added in editorial, you can see that in that little list right here, which explains why it comes back as a ref file. So let's go back to Flix and our project browser. So whenever you publish from editorial, it will create a new version in your project browser. So first thing I want to touch on is this little Q icon right here. So when there's a P icon, it means it was published to editorial. When there's a Q icon, it means it was published back from editorial. The Q stands for QuickTime. And if you actually click on that, Flix will open QuickTime Player or VLC, I think in my case, to play the QuickTime. Sorry about that. To play the QuickTime from editorial, so you can easily review it directly from Flix. You don't have to know where the QuickTime is. Flix knows, so you can just
and you can also access that QuickTime once you get into the sequence. So for example, if you're conforming dialogue, you're going to see a little QuickTime icon. You can click on that. It will do the same exact thing, pull it up in a new window, and then you can just sit in Flix and conform your dialogue there.
Exactly. So this is the QuickTime icon right here that Maddie was talking about. So I loaded that sequence that came back from editorial. So as you can see, we have our shot breaks with the naming convention coming from editorial. We also have obviously the timing. And when we talked about ref panels, so whenever you add an effect to a board in editorial, so let's say a camera move, or in that case we added a little title on the track above that says Flix, just to pretend she has a Flix sweater, very fashionable. So Flix will create ref files, and the way it does that, it just grabs frames from the QuickTime and creates a panel out of that. Mm-hmm. It also maintains a link to the original PSD file, because obviously these are just frames from the QuickTime, like I just said, so it's just flat JPEGs. If you give that to your story artist or your revision artist, they're not going to be happy. They want to work with the original PSD file. So if you click on the part that says ref-3, it actually gives me access to the original Photoshop or Storyboard profile. I can just click on that and make my edit on this board instead.
Yeah, and the lovely news for editors, as they know, is that, you know, the track is separate. So whatever edits your artist makes, it's going to come back in and just sit under the track you've made in future iterations, which is really nice workflow-wise. It means that things can move much more seamlessly than before. Oh, he was just looking at me because he was confused because it's over. So that's it really for editorial workflow. The things that are really going to be relevant and important to you is that Flix is handling the conform back from editorial of timings and effects and all of that stuff. The other thing that's also very important is I know increasing number of people are working with outside vendors, so you can get very, very specific when it comes to, you know, the dialogue where it should be falling as it moves into previs and rough LO and eventually lip sync. It's very helpful there. But yeah, that's it for editorial. Now let's move on to this critical, massively important move from pre-production to production, which makes many, many, many production management members' lives very difficult. We're trying to make it easier for you, so let's show how that happens. All right, so this is going to be the last thing we cover in our webinar. We'll open it up to questions from you guys after if you're watching this live with us. But we are going to show you a really nice plugin that we have built out called Production Handoff. This is useful for when you move from pre-production, which is quite nimble and ever-changing, to shot production, where you just need a bunch of information organized simply in nice little packets ready to ship off either to your vendor or to your animation department, whatever it is. So Bryce, show them how it works.
Sure. Again, very easy. So in our editorial plugin group right here, where we used to have Avid and Premiere, we have this new plugin called Production Handoff. I'm not going to run it right now because it generates a bunch of files and that will take minutes.
It will take minutes and we don't have that time to waste, so we're going to use our cooking show secret. We are opening up the oven. Oh my god, it's done.
It's here. Beautiful.
Wow.
So I have this directory called Production Handoff on my desktop, and in there, this is what it creates. So it will create a directory for your show, for your sequence, for each shot as well. So this is shot 010 or 20. Obviously, the shot naming convention matches what I had in Flix, which itself matches what we had in editorial. And let's just look at shot 40. It will create a version, a directory for every version that you exported using the Production Handoff plugin. And in there, you will have a bunch of information. So the first thing you have is just a contact sheet with all the boards that make up that shot, which includes like the duration. If you have dissolves in and out, you will have that information in there. You have a CSV file. So in case you have a TD who wants, a CSV file with information about the shot and the boards that make that shot to do some more scripting, that's available too. You will have a movie file for each of those shots. You will have an MP3 file for each of those shots. The JPEGs that you see in Flix with the dialogue burnt in for each board that make up that shot, as well as the original PSD file for each of those boards.
So really, we give you everything so you can choose what you need and what you want. The other thing that we've built out due to very popular demand is integration with Shotgun. So right now, Flix can push essentially something that mirrors our production handoff into Shotgun and update the information. That means you can start from scratch. If you have an edit that is ready to enter production, you can say send this to Shotgun. It'll generate all of those sequence and shot names for you as you go through and do this, and then it'll version from there, which is really, really useful. It's worth noting as well that Shotgun can also come back into Flix. So if you need Shotgun's naming conventions, if that's where you're handling that information can also come back into Flix. So really, Flix is your pre-production tool. Then whether you have something proprietary or you have a vendor who's doing it or you're using Shotgun, Flix can get that information and put it out there for you, which is really, really important to keeping things organized. So I hope that was a nice overview of how Flix can help your production, keep you guys creative while being efficient, taking a lot of work off human shoulders and putting it onto computer ones, which I don't know what those are called. Bitbots? I don't know. I shouldn't try to be funny in webinars. So if you have any questions, please feel free to type them to us right now. We can't wait to talk to you. And even beyond that, if you want to get in touch with us, go to our website, click Get in Touch, and we would love to talk to you about how Flix can help your pre-production. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.